A cop retaliates against the witness who caught him drunk driving. Here it is.
Trespassing, that's why.
Where am I trespassing?
Park.
Public parking lot?
No, city parking lot. You got your license on you?
I do. What do you mean, my license?
Because one, you're trespassing.
Can I don't want to switch my. Is that cool?
Well, can I get another unit? Yeah, go ahead.
But I'll wait till the other unit gets here before I reach.
Go ahead and grab your wallet, man. I'm asking for your ID. Yeah, dude's just giving me a hard time.
Do I need to roll down the window? There's nobody in here.
No, you're good. Don't worry about it.
So you know I was here for 2 minutes before you pulled up, right?
That's fine, man.
Okay.
Right.
So I get a ticket for that, right?
Yeah, you're trespassing.
Okay. For 2 minutes, right?
I had no idea if you've been here for 2 minutes.
I had pulled up for 2 minutes. I was on the phone with my wife, and then you pull up with lights on me in an empty parking lot when I literally have my house shoes on. I left the house 2 minutes ago.
His father is assistant chief in Hampton.
This is the guy that gave McClanahan an arrest.
I don't know. Like I said,
Yeah, hold on.
I just spoke to his
McClanahan. All right, so he
I just
loses
spoke to his
control,
dad.
comes across,
Strikes this car on the way as they're coming westbound.
walked out of the car. I know.
What's the name of the guy?
His name's Brandon Williams in the car.
In the median, popping over it. Just imagine how fast he was going.
I have a hell of a story for you. Put it up full mass. So a cop caught lying on the stand allegedly retaliates against the man who exposed him weeks later after he's hit by a drunk driver. Brandon Williams' legal ordeal began January 2020 when he was confronted by a lying white cop in a Virginia parking lot over a questionable trespassing allegation. The officer later falsely accused the black man in court of being one of the, quote, rudest, most combative suspects he had ever come across. Now, none of us saw rude nor combativeness at all. But being rude and combative is legal. It's not against the law. In addition to that, a trespass has to be enforced by private property owner, not the police. So typically, if somebody is accused of trespass or they get arrested for trespass, that's because a no trespass order has already been issued against said person. Anything else, you simply have to tell the individual, leave the property. If they make a reasonable effort to start exiting the property, no trespass has been committed, at least not the arrestable kind. There's more. Norfolk police officer John McClanahan further lied when he told the judge the following month that Mr. Williams had told him he did not have to comply with his orders since his father was a police chief from a nearby agency. Unbeknownst to McClanahan, Williams recorded the interaction, proving he said none of that, which led the cop to retaliate against him. In an exclusive interview with Atlanta Black Star, Williams, 40, said the judge stopped him from explaining his side of the story after 30 seconds during the trial, turning to the cop to hear his version. Quote, he cuts me off, lets the officer talk, asking what happened that night, Williams explained. Quote, the officer immediately says, quote, the suspect over there was one of the rudest, most combative suspects I have ever come across. So immediately I am dumbfounded. Quote, I said, Your Honor, I promise you this officer is lying and I have proof. I have him on tape, end quote. But the judge refused to listen to the recording, convicting Williams of misdemeanor trespassing for having parked 2 minutes after hours inside of a popular park named Community Beach Park, ordering Williams to be booked and photographed for said misdemeanor. Quote, he said, "You're guilty." So I had to get a mugshot and be processed, but I was released at the same time, he said. Williams told his father, Kenneth Ferguson, who at the time was the interim police chief in Hampton, the city's first black police chief at that. And his father was shocked and said, quote, "We don't do that. That's not protocol," end quote. So because of the heavy-handedness of the judge, the obvious lie of the cop, the chief says, wait a minute. Even if you were doing something, what they have done isn't even protocol. So that alerts the chief, who happens to be his father, that there is something obviously very wrong with this. Williams appealed the conviction, which typically you can always do, which went before another judge, in September 2020, where prosecutors offered him a plea deal to apologize to the cop in exchange for having the case. It's called null pros. And when you null pros a case, they don't prosecute, but they can bring it up in the future. Quote, "I told them absolutely not," Williams said. "I was not apologizing. This cop lied on me, and I could not believe they were asking me to apologize," end quote. The judge dismissed the case after listening to arguments from prosecutors and Williams, not even bothering to listen to the recording, expressing surprise he had been cited in the first place. Quote, "She looks at me and says, 'Young man, I'm dismissing this. This case shouldn't have been here in the first place,' he said. 'So I leave the courtroom. I'm happy I won. I'm vindicated. Now I can go to internal affairs and report this officer,' end quote. But then the retaliation began before he even had a chance to file his complaint. So the cops retaliated. So 2 weeks after the appeal reversal, Williams was struck head on by a drunk driver traveling at least 70 miles per hour, who was revealed to have a 0.30 blood alcohol concentration. That's according to a report from the hospital. The local police department took that opportunity to retaliate against Williams after one of the officers recognized him for having exposed McClanahan. Now remember, they're doing all of this because one of their own had a misdemeanor conviction overturned. A misdemeanor conviction overturned in appeal created this kind of backlash for the individual who dared to exercise their constitutional right and the judge who sided with him. There's no backlash for the judge, no backlash for the prosecutor, only backlash for the black male who decided to, well, be a whole human being and utilize his constitutional rights. Quote, this is the guy, this is a quote, "This is the guy that gave McClanahan a ration of ish," said one of the cops who responded to the scene according to body camera footage. The footage shows witnesses telling the officers the man in the truck that struck Williams, Rex Amon, a pilot for the U.S. Navy who was in full uniform, had been traveling at least 70 miles per hour when he swerved into the path of Williams on a bridge. Despite witnesses and despite evidence showing Rex Amon was traveling at a very high rate of speed, the cops claimed in their report he was only traveling 35 miles per hour when he lost control of his vehicle and crashed into Williams' car, blaming it on defective steering. They also claimed there were no skid marks, but body camera video shows a witness pointing out the skid marks for the investigators, for the cop. The police report also claimed Amon had not been drinking, but none of the officers gave him a breathalyzer, simply asking him if he had been drinking, which he denied. It was only at the hospital about an hour later that a blood test revealed him to have a 0.30 blood alcohol concentration level. which is 4 times the legal limit, and it was an hour after. Williams filed a federal lawsuit against the local police department, the cops, in September 2022, accusing them of retaliation. But a judge dismissed the case July 2023, prompting him to file another appeal. In October of 2024, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed the lower court's decision to dismiss the case, meaning when they dismissed it, they were improper in doing so. Now, what do you have? You have Black male who obviously is well in tune to his rights and willing to utilize the capacity of the court, even when a court decides to not respond in kind. He knows how to appeal constitutional violations, not only from the level of law enforcement, also from the level of the judiciary. Obviously, he has listened to his father, who was the interim chief of police for a neighboring city at the time, but he's also a person who's willing to stand up for himself. And because of that, his leadership is bringing light to an entire police department who would operate in such an extreme way. You have to understand, these folks are literally breaking the law for a trespassing charge. What kind of cop would break actual laws to protect anybody because they had a trespassing conviction overturned on their watch? It lets you know how sadistic they are. All right. Tehran, thoughts here, dear brother?
Well, I don't even know where to begin, but to be honest, this is why they, and by they, you know exactly who I mean, are so afraid of us, and you know who exactly I mean, of being educated. This is an educated brother who knew his right, thankfully had the background and the support to be able to go this far, but think of how many times this has happened to someone that has not been able to do so.
Yep.
There are specific laws in this country against retaliation because we're not a tyranny, because we're not an oppressive. Needs versus Bartlett, Gonzalez versus Trevino. These are laws set by the Supreme Court which protect the individual against police retaliation, especially against things like freedom of speech. Now, why is that important? Clearly, his civil rights have been trampled. More importantly, his respect for the United States has been treaded on. All those people who are wearing the "Don't Tread on Me" t-shirts, this is when you should be out and about fighting. This is when that blue wall came up and tried to lever and leverage a person who happens to be a person of color just because they did not like that he stood up to their injustice. That is it. Pulling over into a parking space just because you want to use a cell phone, we can't talk and drive. So he pulls over and does the responsible thing, and now all of a sudden he's the villain. And during an accident, you point out and go, "This is the guy that gave McClanahan-ish," instead of saying, "This is the guy, the poor guy who just got struck head on in a 70-mile-plus collision by a drunk driver." The fact that the police officers did not test the other driver and he was tested at the hospital, that tells you all you need to know. The fact that this was dismissed every single time at appeal, overturned, tells you everything that you need to know. This is conspiracy, this is collusion, this is corruption in the United States.
That's right. And, you know, I do something called reading between the lines. Number one, the officer made up a false narrative about the young man saying, "My dad is a police chief," which never was said on this recording, but it lets me know that the cop knew that his father was the first Black police chief of said city, number one. Number two, when the cop said to the judge, "Oh, he was just the rudest individual," and then the judge all of a sudden decided to stop the true victim's testimony to listen to the cop, the judge decided to convict because the young man did not stay in his place of mind, his manners. That's what that conviction was about. And then after that, you have an entire police force who engages in a systemic cover-up in order to punish one person. But truly it's to punish a principle. And that principle is Black folk progressing in that region.